Imagine standing in the Australian bush in 1880. The air is thick with smoke. Bullets are snapping branches around you. Out of the mist walks a figure that shouldn't exist. He looks like a medieval demon, a man clad in quarter-inch thick iron plowshares, beaten into a crude suit of armor. The police fire, and the bullets just bounce off. Clang, clang, clang. This was the Kelly Gang, 4 outlaws who wore 97 pounds of iron to survive a shootout. And for a moment, it worked. They were walking tanks before tanks were invented. Fast forward 30 years to 1914. The world is at war on a scale never seen before. Machine guns fire 600 rounds a minute. Artillery shells turn square miles of earth into the surface of the moon. And yet, millions of men marched into this hell wearing nothing but cloth tunics and felt hats. We tend to think of the knight in shining armor as a relic of the past, but in the desperate mud of the Western Front, the past came crashing back. Faced with industrial slaughter, generals and inventors reached back into the Middle Ages. They built walking steel coffins, lobster shell suits, and heavy iron masks. Today, we are analyzing the bizarre, terrifying, and often tragic history of World War I body armor. Why did we try to turn soldiers into knights, and why did the Iron Man of 1917 fail, only to be reborn as the tank? To understand the armor, you have to understand the vulnerability. When the Great War broke out, protection was an afterthought. The French army wore bright red trousers. The Germans wore leather helmets, the Pickelhaube, which looked intimidating with that spike on top, but offered about as much protection as a shrapnel, as a baseball cap. The war quickly settled into static trenches, and here the threat changed. It wasn't just bullets flying horizontally, it was death raining from above. Shrapnel shells would burst overhead, sending jagged metal tearing downward. The number one cause of death wasn't a shot to the heart, it was a splinter to the skull. By 1915, the hospitals were overflowing with head injuries. The French were the first to react, introducing the steel Adrian helmet. The British followed with the iconic Brodie helmet, shaped like a soup bowl to cover the shoulders from falling debris. The Germans brought in the Stahlhelm, a design so effective it influenced modern Kevlar helmets today. But here is where things get weird. When the British Army introduced the steel helmet, the High Command was horrified. They looked at the hospital reports and saw that the number of soldiers coming in with head injuries had skyrocketed. Generals argued that the helmets were a failure. They thought the steel was causing the shrapnel to fragment worse. But they were falling for a classic logical trap: survivorship bias. Before the helmets, a man hit in the head with shrapnel didn't go to the hospital. He went to the morgue. He was a killed-in-action statistic, not an injury statistic. The helmets were working so well that men were finally surviving long enough to be treated. But a helmet only protects your head. The rest of the body was still soft, vulnerable flesh, and that terrified the soldiers. They needed more coverage. They needed the lobster. Enter the German Sappenpanzer, widely known as Lobster Armor. Imagine you are a German sentry. It's 2 a.m. You have to stand perfectly still in a forward listening post, staring into the dark of no man's land. A sniper is waiting for you to twitch. The army issues you this kit. It's a heavy steel breastplate that hangs from your shoulders, with 3 lower plates protecting your gut and groin. It looks like the shell of a crustacean. It weighs nearly 25 pounds. They made 500,000 of these sets. That is 500,000 suits of armor sent to the front. The idea was simple. If you are a machine gunner or a sniper, you aren't running around. You are a human turret. You hook the armor onto your shoulders, maybe attach an extra heavy steel plate to the front of your helmet called a Sternpanzer, literally forehead armor, and you become bullet resistant. And I do mean resistant, not proof. These plates could stop a pistol round or shrapnel, but a high-velocity rifle round from a British Lee Enfield, at close range, it would punch right through, or worse, the energy of the impact would drive the steel plate into your ribs, shattering your bones, even if the bullet didn't penetrate. But the Germans weren't the only ones trying to turn men into machines. The Americans arrived late to the war, but they brought some of the strangest ideas with them. This is the Brewster Body Shield. It doesn't look like a soldier. It looks like a character from a nightmare or a bad sci-fi movie. It consisted of a breastplate and a headpiece that weighed a combined 40 pounds. It was awkward, heavy, and restricted your vision to tiny slits. There is a famous scene in the Italian film Many Wars Ago where soldiers are forced to wear similar armor to walk slowly toward enemy machine guns. The scene is tragic. The men can't run, they can't take cover, they just plod forward until the sheer volume of fire knocks them down. And that highlights the critical flaw of all these designs. Why didn't everyone wear this armor? If it stopped shrapnel, why not issue it to every infantryman? 2 words: mud and mobility. World War I wasn't fought on firm ground, it was fought in a swamp. No man's land was a churned-up soup of clay and water. Men drowned in the mud just wearing their cloth uniforms. Now imagine strapping 30 to 50 pounds of steel to your chest. You try to charge across the cratered field. You slip, you fall face down into the muck. With that weight on your back, you can't get up. You're a turtle flipped on its shell, slowly suffocating in the mud while machine gun fire cracks overhead. The armor made it impossible to shoulder a rifle properly. It made it impossible to throw a grenade. It made it impossible to crawl. In a war where getting low was the only way to survive, armor forced you to stand tall and slow. Furthermore, there was the physics of the blast. Steel stops metal fragments. It does not stop a shock wave. If an artillery shell lands near you, the overpressure liquefies your internal organs. A steel plate on your chest might actually make the concussion worse by trapping the blast wave against your body. The soldiers hated it. They would often accidentally lose their armor during marches. They preferred the ability to dive into a hole over the questionable protection of a steel plate. The Kelly Dang worked because they were fighting police with revolvers. The armies of 1917 were fighting industrial physics. By 1918, it was clear that the human body could not carry enough steel to survive modern weapons. We had reached the biological limit of the soldier. But the concept wasn't wrong. The generals were right. They needed armor to break the deadlock. They just put it on the wrong platform. They realized that if a man couldn't carry the armor, they needed an engine to carry it for him. They took the steel plates off the man's chest and bolted them onto a tractor chassis. The walking steel coffin became the tank. The tank was the ultimate realization of the Brewster Shield and the Lobster Armor. It provided the mobile immunity to machine guns that the infantry desperately craved. Today, we have circled back. With modern ceramics and Kevlar, soldiers once again wear body armor, plates that can stop rifle rounds without weighing 50 pounds. But for a brief, terrifying window in the early 20th century, we tried to solve the problem with raw iron. We sent men out into the mud dressed like knights, hoping that history would protect them from the future. It didn't, but their struggle paved the way for the mechanized warfare we know today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the forgotten tech of World War I, hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments, would you rather take your chances with speed and mobility or trust your life to the steel plate? See you in the next one.